Hello everyone, I'm Andre.
I'm Sami, and we are from Nordea, and we are here to walk you through our journey, how we modernize our payment systems QA.
We will talk about how we reduce testing cycle times from 3 weeks to 3 hours, and the way we did that by changing culture, mindset, our technical setup, and many small decisions along the way. We will focus on the journey and tell it as a story, so we will not go into technical details of test automation, for example. But before we jump into that, let's do our personal intro first. Of course, we couldn't resist to ask AI to create a picture about us, and after approximately 164 attempts, this is the best we came up with. The golf club is still not in the man's hand, and we're not exactly sure who's holding the beer glass, actually. But among us, we have 44 years in QA, we have 15 years in Nordea, 2 wives, 2 kids, 1 cat, so we are proof that QA can reproduce once. Our hobbies are brewing beer, playing golf, and I guess which one involves spreadsheets? But we're trying to stay fit by playing floorball, going to the gym, and running.
And after so many iterations, you still don't count golf as a sport, it seems.
Still doesn't count.
Yes, cool. I'm Finn. I'm living in Finland, and I'm working in Finland, so I like to keep things quite simple.
And I'm a German living in Sweden, working in Denmark, because I like border controls and currency conversions.
Before jumping into real story, a couple of words about Nordea. So there is roughly 32,000 of us at the moment. In technology is around 8,000, including consultants, so we are quite a big technology company. Out of those, there is 1,300 QA, so we are also quite large QA organization as well. In the payments area where we are working, there is 600 of us, and out of that, there is 120 QA colleagues of ours. So we are quite big QA organization and setup as well. We are one of the largest technology employers in Nordics and Poland. On the map, you can see our technology offices. In fact, that when we create this presentation, we realized that we still have 2 offices here in Estonia, where we have more than 1,000 people working for us. Then a couple of words about payments.
Let's talk a bit about payments, everybody's favorite subject after lunch. So this diagram here is actually just a small piece of the landscape, and that's all we are allowed to show you. Of course, in banking, everything is very secret. But what makes payments complex? There are a few dimensions that create complexity. First of all, there are many payment standards, actually. You might have heard of SEPA and SWIFT. And like all standards, they receive also regular updates where new features and functionalities are added. Then the sheer number of systems involved. When we were prepping for this talk yesterday, Sami and me, over a cup of coffee, Sami sent me the money for his coffee, and I had it in my account after 2 seconds. And just in this one single instant transaction, as we call it, instant payment, there were around 25 systems involved. And there are many more surrounding systems for compliance, reporting, monitoring, you name it, all the way down to core banking systems. Another dimension for us at Nordea is Nordea's history. Nordea is made up of 300 banks that went together over the last 200 years. And since the dawn of computers, of course, all of these banks came with their IT system that was integrated. The last dimension I'll mention here is the criticality of the systems. We are processing millions of transactions every day. We are moving billions of euro. So we are critical to society, and our systems need to run very reliable and stable.
And putting that into our context, we are operating in 4 countries, 4 markets, so multiplying all of this by 4.
So no pressure.
Yes. A small disclaimer before we jump into the topic. So this presentation reflects our journey, our decisions, our lesson learned, and our challenges during the way. This isn't any one-size-fits-for-all presentation, so that's okay that if this is not fitting directly to your context. We still hope that this inspires you to get something, hopefully, back with you at home.
All right, so notice the speedometer here in the bottom right corner. That indicates our progress towards fast cycle times.
Not a sauna meter, by the way.
It's not a sauna meter like all the Finnish people always think. So let's rewind 4+ years. Back then, the situation was actually not too bad for the time being, but delivery pressure was increasing. There's more and more regulatory requirements coming to the banks from the EU, from the other national banks, and it was difficult to keep up. And the way it works when banks move to a new version of a payment standard, all banks need to change at the same time in order to stay compatible. So there's very little flexibility when it comes to timelines. And the problem was that every time there was a small change of plans or change of scope, we had to add 3 weeks to our delivery timelines because it took 3 weeks to run a full regression cycle. So we knew something had to change in order to stay in business and staying competitive. And of course, we had to do all of that while the bank was still operating. So we had to do all these changes. It was like changing the engine in a car while the car was still running at full speed on a frozen Nordic highway.
And adding another dimension here is that some of our applications are provided by third parties. So again, no pressure. So the story starts that as Andre said, that we were doing good and we were matching everything what was on 4 years ago. When I joined Nordia's QA management team, I quickly realized that no one has a full picture of QA, what is happening on the payments area. So I needed that something has to change. And as we said, we knew that we have to start being able to scaling up. So I need help. So I started to find partners in crime. It would seem that, as mentioned, 1,300 people among us in QA, that it would be an easy job. But finding the right person with the right mindset, right expertise, it wasn't an easy task, even not in our context. Luckily, I found this handsome gentleman in Copenhagen trading floor, and we have been ever since tackling these things together. Secondly, we immediately realized that we are not technical people and we are not technically strong enough. So we needed someone to drive the automation. We still have a kind of plan that we need to automate to be able to, keep the game. So we were going for hunting the automation architect. Luckily, that search was a little bit easier for us, and within our teams, we were able to find quite quickly the very strong automation person. Then we had basically our core trio in place. So we had Andre, who is taking care of the strategy. Then we have this strong automation person in Poland, who prefers stay there and doing work instead of being here with us today, and then me. Then we started to think about a little bit that, okay, what we should start doing.
And this is where I come in the middle of vendor consolidation. So there were many new people around me, and there were actually not many people that knew what's going on in QA. So what to do? We started assessing, and here on the screens you can see all the areas we started looking into. And we'll just mention a few of these items here that are important for our story. So even though the organization actually had a good reputation being able to deliver on time, we noticed in QA you could still optimize many things. For example, the automation that was there was based on user interface automation, basically simulating a business user. So of course that was very slow and unstable. There was no common code repository for 15 teams, so there was very little reusability, and all the teams had slightly different ways of working, and there was all the teams were reinventing the wheel. The CI/CD setup was also in the middle of a switch from Bamboo to Jenkins, so that was also quite unstable. And sometimes our automation engineers were then forced to run the automated tests locally from their machines. There was no environment governance in place. So what that means is basically that some teams connected their dev environments to other teams' test environments when things didn't work. Nobody was keeping track of that or controlling that in any way. The mindset was very much focused on manual testing. So instead of thinking about how can we do things smarter or use automation to solve our problems, people were basically thinking we need to get more people and defaulting to that. So as you can see, this was a pretty big backlog, and this is where we came up with one of our first slogans. You will hear more about our slogans that we came up along the way here. And we started by fixing the basics. So that was the slogan we came up here at this point. All right, so what to do? We, of course, had the typical manager idea. Let's just create a new team that will solve all our problems for us. So the idea was to create a center of excellence. So we got 5 experts, automation engineers in Poland. And the idea was that they would build and maintain the framework, build a lot of technical enablers, do POCs for the teams, and guide them in automating their functionalities. What we were seeing was a pull model, meaning that when delivery teams needed some new functionality, the experts in the COE would implement that in the framework, and then the delivery teams could quickly start scripting tests using that new functionality.
And it's only last week when this core team full of people got an award in our internal technology awards, which is sponsored by our CIO. And they received this award because of their work and their kind of achievements towards automation. And so we are very proud of that team as well.
All right, so now that we had the COE in place, one of the first decisions we actually had to take was then to scrap the old automation framework and build a new one from scratch. The old one was just not performing at all. So the COE got to work and did some POCs, and pretty soon we started seeing results. And the results were spectacular. We could see a 10x performance improvement straight out of the box, and reliability was also much better because we moved away from UI-based automation and we started using fast technical checks, another slogan, which means that we were checking things using API calls, checking things directly in the database, or Kafka topics, for example. We also cleaned up our test case repository. In the beginning, when we started, we could see there were around 85,000 test cases in the repository. But again, nobody had a good overview of what's there, what should be kept, what is still usable. So after this huge cleanup exercise, we could then finally also create metrics based on our tools and extract the numbers in an automated way. So we, in the end, finally had also automated metrics.
Talking about metrics, here are some examples what we are collecting and showing nowadays. So on the middle of the left-hand side, you can find the automation ratio. So that was the first metrics that came up in our Grafana dashboard. Ever since, we have added a lot of other metrics from test executions to release tracking checking our environment, health situation and availabilities. I think the latest addition is to check the bug quality in Jira. So how well the bug report has been raised, how well all the mandatory fields has been fulfilled. If there are missing some information, we are sending out the emails to the person who raised that and ask kindly to fix certain things. And we are showing percentages on our Grafana dashboards that how many percentages of the bugs has been raised correctly.
But this one graph with the automation ratio was a huge success. We never got so much attention from management until that point in time. And it really helped to kick off our automation journey. The teams could follow their progress. You could easily spot when there are some impediments, like in this graph here, you can see that the line is hovering around 60% for a while before it kicks off and improves again. So having that in place was really useful. Teams could use that in their art reviews and in their team internal discussions. It was very clear when things were not improving over time. So great success. And that was one important learning for us, that it's very important that you visualize your improvements and your achievements, because these little things help you then to get buy-in in the future when you want to scale up or need further investments then.
Talking about scaling up, so we had this core team full of expertise in our COE. But we knew that if we want to run and fix this for good, we need much more people, and that's totally different story. So we needed to have an investment and buy-in from the management. We had this COE innovations and pilots and POC, which gave us credibility to scale up. So we knew that we are on the correct track. So as every good investment needs a solid and good business case. Soon we found ourselves back on the drawing tables and start drawing these old-fashioned automation benefits diagrams where one line goes down and one is raising and so forth. So we were like consultants back of the days. While we were doing that, we realized that there are much more benefits behind the numbers, behind the costs and behind the ROIs. We understood it that if we can do this in the way that we want, we are able to show much more benefits rather than saving some costs. Agility and speed, yet another slogan, what we introduced was to engage management and get their kind of buy-in on our way to show that we can scale much faster and we are able to take much more work within our teams.
All right, so now that we got management approval to scale up, let's talk a bit about how that was reshaping our teams then. So first of all, by that time then, we had noticed that our pull approach with the COE did not really work. Progress was not as expected. And the reason was very simple. The delivery teams were just way too focused on delivery work, and they couldn't do all the automation improvements that we wanted them to do at the same time. So we decided to move our senior experts, automation engineers, directly to the delivery teams. So we moved them to the teams so they would be closer to the action, they can spot automation opportunities, and they can drive automation from inside the teams. So we officially dissolved the COE, and at the same time we got more and more automation engineers into the teams. And that's where we came up with yet another slogan, automation first, because we wanted teams not to first create manual test cases, run them, and then at some point automate them. So the idea here was that we create automated tests immediately. Then having more and more automation-based way of working, we could then also start optimizing our teams. And that means that some of our senior manual testers then became analysts or scrum masters, or they trained to become automation engineers, or they moved to the end-to-end team that we also had. Having put automation engineers then in charge of QA in the teams freed up our test managers also from doing more delivery teams focused work to turn their attention towards end-to-end testing, which requires a completely different focus and mindset. And that, by the way, could be the story of our sequel then at some point.
Perhaps.
And this is where we are now, approximately. This is how far we have come in our journey, and that's all the things we have done until now, as you can see in the sauna meter. And now let's see what that did to our cycle times and coverage.
Yes, so we are very proud of what we and our teams has been able to achieve. We knew and we know that this was very quick cleanse, just a part of our journey, which we share to you today. But I think that these are the biggest things what we have done so far, individually biggest things. So at the beginning when we started, we as a QA, we were seen as a bottleneck. So we turned that completely upside down. So now we are a trusted partner and important part of the delivery. And as shown as a graphs, everyone is now kind of onboarded with us and heading on the same direction. We are now delivering much more with less. Again, thanks to automation ratios and coverages. We don't have to anymore scale by recruiting. So meaning that if there is coming a new scope or new regulatory things to do, we don't have to add people. We can take and handle most of that easily. The testing cycles we manage eventually reduce from 3 weeks to 3 hours. Our test coverage has been at least 10 times, even more, thanks to our automation ratios, which is somewhere up to 80% nowadays. Our tool usage and data collection from our tools like Jira and Qtest was non-existing. Now we have customized our tools and integrations in a way that we can have real data constantly. Back of the days as well, our test managers and everyone was collecting all the information manually to Excels. And as we show you, we have now Grafana dashboards with the live data, which has been quite improvement as well. Since we are heading end of our presentation, I think it's time for cocktails.
Yes, like in any good bar, there should be a few last words, like the Prohibition area cocktail that you can see on the screen now. So here are some of our last words and lessons learned. So first of all, big challenges like reducing cycle times, you don't solve with one big solution. It's all about the small fixes that add up over time. Second, it's all about people. You need the right people on your journey with the right mindset, so invest in your people and take care of them. You can't solve it all in one go, so focus on continuous improvement, and you never know what's the next curveball that the corporate world throws at you. Another thing is, you should start small, show early successes, and then you can use that to get buy-in to scale up or for if you need further investments then in the future. And as you heard many of our slogans now, we came up with many slogans along the way, starting from fixing the basics in the beginning of the journey with repeatable quality and agility and speed to get management buy-in, fast technical checks to move away from UI-based automation, and then automation first, probably our most powerful slogan, to really have an automation-based way of working. So these slogans help to spread our message and make everybody move in the same direction. So cheers everyone, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So questions, yes. Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. I don't know if we're going to be able to go back to your previous slides where you showed the Grafana metrics. One question that I would have is, what do you base your automation ratio on? So is it based on the number of new test cases written, or is it based on some coverage of existing code branches, or what exactly does it express?
It's basically extracted from the test case management tool, where we mark test cases as manual, automated, should be automated, or should not be automated, or undecided. So then we take the total number of test cases and the number of automated.
And partly because we are handling some part is third-party provider application, so we are not able to access the code, and so that's give us the little bit limitation to go on the code level.
There's a bit more going on in the background as we have the code repositories master, and we just upload the test cases then based on code from the code repo into the test case management tool.
Okay, here. I'm a bit curious about the teams setup. So you said you introduced test automation leads or test automation engineers. So currently, how are the teams set up? Like, how big are the teams? And do you have, for example, a test automation engineer per team or per cluster of teams? How does this work?
Yes, the teams are too big, actually, if you think about the ideal Scrum team size, but they are sort of between 15 and 20 people, and most of the QA people are automation engineers now, and some of the teams are pure QA teams, basically, because some of the teams work with third-party software, but in the mixed teams, we also have developers then.
Another question from my side would be, how do you measure the success of your automation suite or your automation efforts? Is it by the number, the smaller number of bugs that reach production, or is it maybe by an increase in the number of bugs, bug reports that you have in your bug trackers, but that have been identified by your automation tests?
Yeah, so that's where we are about in our journey, and that's one of the next steps, that we will look into defects leakage then to production. We have done some POCs and pilots on that, but we haven't put that fully into practice yet. But we can see that the number of, or the go-lives that we're having now are having less issues compared to 3-4 years ago. So our operations people are giving us pretty clear feedback when something is not going smooth, and when they say it was a smooth release, then it really means something. Yes, yeah. Yes. And we are of course tracking production defects quite detailed, so the numbers are visible there, that the systems that we cover with our tests are having very few or no production incidents at all. It's all the surrounding systems around us that create problems for us, actually, due to all the integrations.
Yeah, it's the others, it's not us.
Yes, it's the others, yes.
Yeah, hello. Just a question, the 3 hours you mentioned, is that 3 hours and something goes into the production system, or?
No. We are a bank, and we often need to follow this regulatory deadlines where all the banks change payment standard, for example. So our cycles can be very long, from 3 months to 18 months. It could be that we start working on a big regulatory delivery. So there's not much flexibility in the timeline. So in some cases, we could go into a sort of bi-weekly release cycle, but then the big go-live switching on a new version will be dictated by regulators, basically.
All right, a couple of questions.
Finally, I was already afraid that this side of the hall has no questions, but we got one.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Question about tech stack. So why did you choose robot framework?
We did an assessment actually back then, and we were thinking whether we should do something Java-based or robot framework-based. But after discussing with some of our internal experts in Nordea, we decided to go with robot framework and Python. But there was no compelling reason as such. It's what we came up with after discussing things.
Yeah, and basically when we joined, they were already, all the existing test cases were done by robot framework and Python.
So there was a bit of background, you could say, yes.
How much discount do you get based on this question now?
Exactly.
We have to negotiate that afterwards, yes.
Of course, it was the technically best solution.
I'm just a little curious. How long did it take for you to do this transformation? Like from the moment you got the strong QA leads or managers until the output right now that you can share?
We have been this journey last 4 years. I think we are not ready yet. So there are identified things we have to optimize our engines and so forth. But as Andre mentioned, majority of our QA people nowadays are automation people, so we are very automation driven already. So that was kind of one of the kind of big achievements in a way, and our targets that we have to get basically rid of. We can't automate everything, and we are very well aware of that, and we have some solution which needs manual testing in a way that we can't automate everything. But it has been last 4 years,
4 years,
say.
and
yes.
we probably spent the first year to get buy-in from management to scale up, and then fixing the basics. And then we're not all the teams are at the same level, so it's 15 different teams, and there are different maturity levels. So we started with the core teams, and then team by team we did these modernizations. And it's still going on.
Yes.
Yeah, with the scale-up companies usually and new tools and technologies coming in, how do you cope up with your organizations? I mean, sometimes it is like some QAs, they want this tool, the other QAs, they want that tool. So how do you cope up in your organization?
Well, as we are a big institutional bank, we have our own processes on that. So I would say from our perspective, that is a challenge that we can't introduce those. That world is quite rapidly changing around us, and AI is coming, and a lot of other awesome tools are available. So we have our own internal processes that we have to go into and look into that if there is any other tool which can do the same and so forth. So unfortunately, that is a bit limitation in a way. But at the moment, I think we are in quite good shape in a way. But we are constantly looking at what else is in the market and what we could be able to introduce into our pipelines and way of working.
Hi. Hello. Yeah.
No,
sorry.
hello.
Thanks for the presentation. I would like to ask, like, when you first implement the automation approach, and when you try to increase the automation ratio of the engineers, did you face any resistance from the manual QA? And if so, how did you manage them and train them?
I would say first that the most resistance we got from the management, from the project management, from RTs, from everyone who has used to do it in the old way. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges and resistance what we got.
Basically, they were saying we don't have time to automate, we need to deliver. We cannot do this in parallel. That was the biggest mindset change to overcome, I would say. And that was basically, the slogans helped a lot. You know, now we come so far that after explaining it over and over time and showing these early successes, you know, once you can show that the suites are running 10 times faster, they're much more reliable, then you get buy-in. And now we're at this point that even the people that don't understand automation say, yes, we need to automate, and more automation is better.
Mm-hmm. And the graph on a board helped us a lot.
Yeah, that's one, many small things, basically.
Yes.
I'm just building on my previous question because it's something that not bothers me but preoccupies most of my time about measuring the success of the automation, right? And of course, you know, correlation is not causation. So the simple fact that you have less bugs in production now does not necessarily mean that it's because of the automation effort. There could be many other factors involved. Have you thought, or I mean, if you haven't already, you will probably need to think of it in the future. Is there another way that you could actually measure the success of your automation? Not just in this way, like less production, less bugs reaching production environments. Like something that it's somehow tied much closer to only the automation.
Well, I would say if you have any good ideas, we would like to hear them. But we are also tracking, for example, the time it would take to run these tests in a manual way. So we're running hundreds of man-hours on a daily basis now with all these automated tests that we're having.
Yeah, but I think that is probably struggling a bit that everyone else, I think, to show the kind of real value, measurable value as automation. For us, it is that we are not ending up into newspaper, more or less.
And like we said, it's not all about the numbers, it's also agility and speed that we gain with automation. We can react much faster to changes, and that's also something we had to explain to management, basically. It's not all about the automated tests themselves.
All right. Thank you very much. And a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will be getting ready for the next presentation shortly.